Welcome to episode 14 of Politically Charged. I'm your host, Jack Merlin. Today is Monday, August 14th, a week from when school starts up again. And thank you for checking this episode out. Whether this is your first episode or your 14th episode, it's still crazy to me that people actually listen to this and that I've gotten the type of support that I have. So thank you for that. As always, check out politicallycharged.us for all our content, including links to Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and really pretty much anywhere you can listen to podcasts. With that being said, I really don't know how to start this episode. Racism reared its ugly head once again this past weekend in Charlottesville, Virginia, where 3 people lost their lives because of the unrest created by white supremacists. It's an incredibly heavy and important topic to discuss, so we're going to start with what's been overshadowed by the tragic events of this past weekend before we get into it. So, we'll start with something light, ease into what'll end up being a heavy episode. President Trump deciding to play chicken with North Korea. Let's start with why this is happening. Last weekend, the UN unanimously imposed new sanctions on North Korea, sanctioning about a third of the North Korean economy. The friendly hermit nation responded to this with a warning to the United States that any invasion would be met with a nuclear attack on the U.S. mainland. Dope. Never one to be outdone. President Trump very calmly, almost like the mooch, told reporters that North Korea best not make any threats against the U.S. because they will be met with fire and fury, the likes of which the world has never seen. To which North Korea responded by threatening Guam, a territory of the U.S. which is home to thousands and thousands of American service members. This is a completely ridiculous and it actually turns out impromptu statement made by the president because he's really good at thinking on his feet like that. It immediately raised the question of if President Trump had drawn a red line over rhetoric, something that the always bombastic North Korea would inevitably cross. And then turns out they actually did cross that line less than a day later by announcing plans for a missile strike off the coast of Guam, which would be a severe escalation of events right now. Obviously, we here at Politically Charged hope cooler heads prevail. I don't know about you guys, but I don't exactly have the utmost amount of confidence in Trump to handle pretty simple things like condemning Nazis, which he failed to do, much less have confidence in him starting a war with North Korea. On past episodes, I've advocated for the U.S. taking a tough stance on North Korea, but I'm not entirely sure trying to project confidence by matching North Korean rhetoric is the best possible way to take that tougher stance. Thankfully, many members of the Trump administration have tried to tone down the president's line drawing, but that can only do so much when one somewhat orange person is the only one who has control of the country's nuclear arsenal. Comforting thought, isn't it? When he isn't violating Twitter's terms of service by goading the friendly hermit nation into a war, President Trump decided to take aim at someone who has just a tiny, tiny, tiny bit of sway around D.C., friend of the poor Mitch McConnell. McConnell made a comment in front of a type of town hall type thing in his home state of Kentucky, where he said that he had overestimated how quickly the Trump administration would be able to move on legislation. Of course, Trump handled this very, very slight critique very graciously, as he always does. All he did was attack McConnell multiple times during the course of the week, even going as far as suggesting that it might be time for McConnell to retire, find a new job. Now, I can't say I entirely disagree with our great president on that idea, as I'm not exactly, obviously, the head of the Mitch McConnell fan club, but somebody in Trump's circle might want to remind him how desperately he needs Republicans to help shield him from mounting investigations and to pass the incredibly racist and hurtful legislation he wants. Attacking really the most entrenched of entrenched establishment members is sure to help him with his base, those crazies who won't leave him even though he can't condemn Nazis. But to be fair, all of his moves as of late have pretty much been aimed at shoring up his base and making sure they don't leave him. So this will only hurt him by slowing down his legislative accomplishments even further, something that I didn't even know was possible, but Trump seems hell-bent on finding a way to do it. Actually, some rare good news came out of the Trump family circus last week when President Trump declared a state of emergency regarding the opioid epidemic. In part due to the overprescribed nature of opioids for chronic back pain, really any type of chronic pain, which has actually been proven ineffective. Opioid addiction has developed a grip on places like New Hampshire and Florida that have thus far struggled to control it. Trump's decision to declare a state of emergency opens up the doors for a wider variety of treatment facilities to be offered under Medicaid so more people will be able to afford it, though he still wants drastic cuts to the program from Medicaid. Yet again, contradicting himself. Elsewhere in Trump world, the special counsel has taken aim at Paul Manafort. FBI agents raided the home of ex-Trump campaign manager, current foreign agent, Paul Manafort in late July due to worries that he was not completely truthful with investigators. Imagine that. In order to raid Manafort's home, the FBI would have had to demonstrate probable cause that Manafort is guilty of something. Loyalty-obsessed President Trump immediately distanced himself from Manafort, saying that he had not spoken to him in a long time, and the pro-Trump National Enquirer, the very reputable, I guess it's just a piece of crap, ran a thinly disguised hit piece on Manafort, something that they've been known to do when Trump is in trouble. Reports indicate that in all likelihood, the special counsel is developing a case against Manafort in hopes of getting him to turn on others involved in the Trump campaign. The biggest thing to come out of this is that the huge story that broke about Donald Trump Jr.'s meeting with that pesky Russian lawyer has been attributed to information that Manafort provided to investigators, possibly indicating that Manafort is way more interested in saving his own skin and minimizing his penalties instead of staying quiet, something that Trump has a track record of responding incredibly well to. So I'm sure more fireworks will come out of that. Now, I try to get through the big news of the past week pretty quickly without trying to sound like a caffeine addict. Let's talk about this past weekend's events in Charlottesville. Let's start with kind of a little recap of why things happened the way they did. On Saturday, a Unite the Right rally was held in Charlottesville with hundreds of white supremacists in attendance. Although the rally was immediately dispersed by local police, the emboldened white supremacist movement had previously clashed with protesters the night before at a controversial statue of General Robert E. Lee. This is the same statue of Robert E. Lee that the KKK held a rally, or tried to hold a rally at in the beginning of July, where counter-protesters actually outnumbered them by hundreds and drove them away when they had their little tiki torches. Counter-protesters met these white supremacists at the site of the rally, where clashes started to break out, after which the governor of Virginia declared a state of emergency. Around 2 hours after the state of emergency was declared, a car deliberately ran into the crowd, injuring upwards of 30 people and killing one person. 2 state troopers also tragically lost their lives when the helicopter they were riding in to monitor the clashes crashed for, as of yet, unknown reasons. Thus far, at least 4 people have been arrested for their direct involvement in Saturday's events, including the driver of the car. Attorney General Jeff Sessions announced late Saturday night the opening of a civil rights investigation into the events surrounding the car that was driven into the crowd. The driver of that car has since appeared in court and has been denied bail. I think he was charged on second-degree murder charges. The organizer of the original rally, the original white supremacist rally, a white supremacist named Jason Kessler, immediately attempted to shift blame to law enforcement for not protecting them in their First Amendment rights. After all this, President Trump released a completely inadequate statement condemning hatred, bigotry, and violence on all sides, while somehow managing to not directly name white supremacists or groups like neo-Nazis or even the KKK. He somehow failed to do that. The president thankfully received bipartisan criticism for his failed attempt at commenting, while aides scrambled to amend his statement after white supremacist groups celebrated Trump's reaction to it. I hate listening to the media refer to them as white nationalists. They're white supremacists. They believe in the supremacy of the white race over all others. And judging by some of the pictures that have come out of Charlottesville from this past weekend, they look like they're ready to start some kind of a race war. They are not white nationalists. They are white supremacists, and they need to be referred to as such. The fact that this type of thing can happen in 2017 is horrendous and appalling. That the President of the United States failed to single out the ideology and groups directly responsible for at least one death is ridiculous. That people have gone on TV since the violence started on Saturday and attempted to equate what happened Saturday to Black Lives Matter rallies is disturbingly racist. Black Lives Matter, the rallies were organized against a grotesque lack of justice and fairness in the criminal justice system, and rightfully so. The white supremacists that organized and attended Saturday's rally are simply thugs who do not, in any sense of the word, belong in America. The images that have come out in the wake of all this are jarring. From videos showing the moments before, during, and after the car deliberately ramming into the crowd, to pictures of white supremacists beating black people with anything they could get their hands on. Everything about this has made me ashamed, disheartened, and really, frankly, pissed off. A 32-year-old lost her life this weekend because she had the audacity to believe in equality for all. That what makes us different is exactly what strengthens us as a nation. People aren't born knowing to hate certain things or certain people, or just because somebody's race is different, the color of their skin is different. They aren't born knowing to hate that. It's a learned response. And when the President of the United States releases a statement that not only fails to hold the responsible accountable, but is celebrated by those who are responsible for the violence, the progress we've made as a nation in the past 200 years is completely chipped away at. By empowering people like Steve Bannon, President Trump has further emboldened white supremacists and created a situation in which the people attending these rallies see so little wrong with what they're doing, they don't even bother to hide their face. Now, before I wrap this episode up, I want to leave you guys with this. I believe, actually, I know that people are inherently good. I have a quote here from Nelson Mandela where he said, "Love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite." Completely true. The monsters, the thugs that believe in one racist supremacy over another deserve to be ostracized from our society. There just isn't a place for that in America, as far as I'm concerned. But simply acknowledging that, I've kind of come to realize isn't enough. This episode is coming out so late today because I was waiting on President Trump's second attempt on commenting on the violence, which he, of course, failed. It took him 2 days to come up with a carefully worded speech that included gems. I want to emphasize how much sarcasm is behind the word gems. Gems like racism is evil. It took him 2 days to come up with that crap. And the worst part is that it's a line that's been lauded by certain members of the press. People involved in the press, people involved in getting your news to you, have been giving President Trump props for saying racism is evil. 2 days after the actual events took place. You're telling me it took a White House, it took this White House, it took any White House, 2 whole days, 48 hours, to come up with racism is evil. If he really felt that way, if that's actually how he felt about this, those words would have simply rolled off the tongue during the first attempt. There wouldn't have been any problem. It's not enough to say what you think people want to hear or help preach on a podcast about how important equality for all is. Or really even just retweeting a few things. It's not enough to just be pissed off and motivated in the moment something happens. As former President Obama said, we are the people we've been waiting for. In an era where this type of event is possible, we just can't afford to stand idly by while our leaders take days to condemn blatant racism that incited violence and led to death. And this is one of those issues where, regardless of if you're on the left or the right, the far left, anywhere in between, it's completely preposterous that this type of thing is able to happen in 2017 in America. We need to get out there and fight back in really whatever way you can. This is too important of an issue to just let somebody else do it. We are the change we seek. So, on that incredibly heavy note, thanks for checking out this episode. As always, go to politicallycharged.us, politicallycharged.us, not .com, could not afford that, for all our content and links to various social media. Dropping an episode this Thursday is is going to be it's going to be a complete gamble, since I'm sure I'll have procrastinated to that point and getting ready to go back up to college. So, if you just absolutely need some more Jack in your life, which, to be fair, I think everybody could use some more Jack in their life, head over to It Can't Be Arrogance. If I'm right, go ahead, search that wherever you get your podcast from. You'll find it. My other award-winning podcasts. Barely have time to do that one, but, gotta shout it out anyway. Again, thanks for listening to this episode. Really appreciate it. All the support has been insane. With that being said, we out.